Hello everyone, it's Mr. E here, and you can already tell what it's going to be because you looked at the video title before you clicked on this video. But this is my breakdown for all melee weapons, all marks of all melee weapons, post the crafting update. So we're assuming the best possible blessings on all these weapons. There's a few carve-outs I want to make before we begin. You might have noticed that my tier list here has an extra special one at the top there. This is going to belong to, well, 2.5 weapons, very specific weapons. And the reason I'm putting these weapons up here is because if I don't go ahead and mention them right now and get it out of the way, for the rest of the video, I'm going to have to be saying, this weapon is really good, it's S tier, but you should probably just be using this other weapon instead because it's better. These weapons are just straight up, hands down, better than a lot of their competitors. Since the update, I've been looking at my builds and going, couldn't this build just be better if I ran one of these two instead? And the answer 9 times out of 10 is yes. You've probably already guessed what these weapons are if you know anything about the game. It's the Macabian Mark IV dueling sword, and then I said 2.5 because we've also got both daggers up there, both the Mark IV and the Mark III Katachan combat blades. So the reason these things are up here is because they have an immense boost to your player power level when you're just wielding them because they have such great base stats. They're super easy to use at the lowest levels. The knives specifically have really great synergy with anything that wants to do with bleeds. You can put a ton of bleeds and get lots of crits with these things, which is something that's really a high demand for zealots. It also works very well with veterans who get a lot out of dots. Then you've got the dueling sword, which trades some of that, the movement speed also that knives can offer for more upfront damage. So if you're having trouble with crushers, if you made a build, for instance, like a veteran auto gunner build that murders everything, but it doesn't quite kill crushers, you can kill crushers with this weapon. And all these weapons are immaculate boss killers. The Macabian itself will just do flat damage and murder bosses. The bleeds from these knives will murder bosses. And then both of them, again, like I was saying before, they have movement tech. The knives can charge their heavy attacks and you can use that to slide around. The sword, you can use either the light attack, like tiny boost to get a little bit of a lunge, or you can use the heavy lunge, charging the heavy lunge to slide an extra long distance. So these weapons at a base level, if you're a player who's looking to improve, using them is going to make you play better because they're just that impressively statted. But if you're a higher skill player, the more skill you have, because these are fast attacking weapons that you can almost always be throwing out another attack with it, that means that you could be in the time where you're, normally you would be like attacking and then moving around an enemy to wait for your next attack to be able to come up. You could throw out another attack and kill another enemy in that window because these things can just put out they have a high, huge DPS and skill ceiling. So the more skilled you get, the more you're going to get out of them. And so these weapons are going to just kind of overshadow the rest of this discussion. The rest of this whole time, I want you to just reference them up here. From time to time, I'll just sort of wave my mouse up here and you'll hear this sound. And that's how you know that I'm referencing that these weapons are being mentioned without mentioning their names, because I don't want to have to sing their praises anymore. So, with that being said, now that we've got those weapons out of the way, we can talk about everything else without worrying about comparing it to those. We know those are the best. We know that they're standing right behind me right now with red glowing eyes, waiting to hear that I'm going to compare anything else to their supreme power. But let's get right into it. The first thing I want to do is... Wait, hold on. It's me, Mr. E from the future. I just need to ask you before you go any further. Are you subscribed? I'm trying to get 100 subscribers every day between now and 2025. If I can do that, I'll have 10,000 subscribers before the year is out. And that would make me a very happy boy. if you are a Darktide fan, a fan of my voice, or just RimWorld background music, this is the channel for you, I think. I would really, really appreciate a like, a comment, a subscribe, whatever you can do to help the algorithm feed this sort of stuff to the masses. And with that, I won't hold you up any longer. Let's get into this tier list that I technically did in the past. It's a good one, guys. You'll want to watch. All right. See ya. So let's just go ahead and get something else up here in S tier. I'm going to go ahead and give the Ogryn's best melee weapon right off the front. Ogryn's, here's your best melee weapon. It's the slab shield. Really funny that it has some sort of other weapon with it. It's like a club or something. Literally never use it. The heavy attack on this shield is absolutely perfect for everything Ogryn. I used to be a sworn convert, or like a sworn heavy attacker with the bully clubs. No more. This shield does almost as much damage, but the more important thing is its attack profiles for those heavy attacks are amazing. You can use the edge of that shield on your heavy one attack to hit like 50 enemies in front of you, it feels like. And then your second sweep attack, you can just turn around in a circle and bash everything in the room and knock them into the moon. Literally, like they'll just go flying backwards. This is such a great weapon. It's also got some like unique utility in the fact that if you accidentally pull a demon host, you can block a corner with it. I guess you've probably all seen an Ogryn do that. I wouldn't recommend that. But also if you've got like smaller gunners, like shotgunners and just regular infantry gunners, but not elite gunners, if you block them at all with the shield, they'll just put their gun away and charge you, which can pull them out of like a annoying position and make them come into your position. And that's really, really, really nice. Yeah, just a really super solid weapon. It's got a ton of utility, and if you're looking to up your Ogryn game, grab this thing and run a heavy hitter build with it. Check out my build on the channel. Not my build, I took it from the Ogryn Icon, but you get it. It's just a super, super solid weapon, and you will not be let down playing anything with it. Let's talk about some other Ogryn weapons because they're right here. We've got the couple pickaxes. It's the Branks, the Borovian, and the Carsolus. The Carsolus gets the sole S tier out of these because the problem with these pickaxes is they're all good, right? These are Ogryn weapons. Most Ogryn weapons are good to great. There's a couple that are just average. There's none that are bad. These two weapons, the Branks and the Borovian, they have kind of funky attack patterns, which is fine, but my biggest problem with them is their damage is absolutely overkill. The Branks' light attack damage on a non-headshot on a flak armored enemy is literally almost 600. So we're completely overkilling like everything in the game short of elites. You know, all that little trash and stuff. And we're trading, because we're overkilling, because we're hitting so hard, we're trading a lot of potential attack speed, right? The Borovian gets a little bit closer to that balance, but the Carsolus hits the balance perfectly, where once you have, you know, you put Slaughter on the weapon, so you're getting extra damage from that, and then you just start light attacking, everything that is smaller than an elite, you know, the infantrymen and the poxwalkers and stuff, they die to one hit, regardless of whether it's the body, the head, or whatever. So you become like this lawnmower with a pickaxe. And then when you do encounter a heavier enemy, if you have Slaughter or fully stacked and you hit them in the head, they'll instantly die. And if it's something like a Crusher or whatever, just simply throwing a heavy attack into them does a lot of stagger, and it'll kill them in a couple hits. Like it's no big deal. These other ones, yes, you can kill a Crusher in like one hit with the Branks, I'm pretty sure. But like, what is there more of in the game? All the other enemy types combined, or like Crushers and Maulers, right? So you're trading off a lot by picking these ones with the intent of like, oh, I'm gonna fucking beat the shit out of the first Crusher I see. Versus, you know, I'm going to murderize everything on the map in a, you know, 10-foot wide line all the way down here by, you know, swinging this thing left, right. And the Carsolus actually also happens to have the best light attack, like just generally combo. I'm also going to, while we're talking S tier, I'm going to give big ups to two other weapons that I think are S tier. They are not quite as good as Shield. Shield should be S+. It is not nearly this tier. But These weapons are for heavy attacking, heavy hitter Ogryns. These are single target, beat the shit out of you weapons. So if you want to kill a crusher in 2 hits, you run heavy hitter, you run that whole left side. You could run either charge or taunt, but probably charge. And then you can just beat a crusher in the head once. He's laying on the ground. You hit him again, he's dead. So both of these, the Mark 1 and the Mark 3 Brute Bully Clubs, I really, really love. I prefer the Mark 1 personally, but I've seen people use both because it's just a difference of moveset. The damage profiles are all the same. The one that I really just don't click with as much as the Mark II, and I think that's reflected in how many people you'll see using it, is damage profiles are, again, the same, but the moveset is a little bit wonky and off. Well, speaking of wonky and off, let's talk about this little guy right here. I'm going to have to award the chain axes, both of them, just B tier, middle of the road. I'm reserving C tier for weapons that sort of don't really have a niche to live in anymore. I think there's still you could torture a reason to like come up with, why you would actually want to use one of these chain axes. They do a good clip of damage, but they're really slow, and just like with all chain weapons, activating that chain ability is very cool for a if Fat Shark is making like a thematic, like a cinematic clip of playing the game, you're going to want to see someone charge up their chainsword and slash into a mauler or whatever, right? But in real gameplay, especially as you progress to higher and higher levels, it becomes harder and harder to find time to work those weapon specials in. So you sort of want to rely on weapons that, instead of having part of their damage profile traded off for having a powerful weapon special, they just have that damage baked in right up front. So I'm going to give these B tier just because they're clunky to use. They have high-ish damage, but you know what else has high-ish damage and is super easy to use? It's the Rashad Combat Axe, which is going to get S tier. So this thing is usable in all the melee classes, but I'd really recommend it most on Zealot, because Zealot can make up for its one weakness, which is that you move slowly while you're carrying it. It has amazing finesse damage. This is your single target killer. If you want to dome a crusher, instantly chop him in half, use a Zealot charge, drop the hammer on him. I was using it on my Doomslayer shotgunner build because it's a really easy weapon to secure a single melee kill with and then swap back to the shotgun. However, I have recently replaced it with so this is a really great heavy attack combat axe. However, heavy attacking is not everyone's cup of tea. If you prefer more light attacking, which I do when I'm playing combat axe stuff, it is all about the antax. Where is that? It's kind of dark color. There it is. It's hard to tell with it, when they crop it like this. But the antax is the flip of the Rashad. The Rashad has exceptionally powerful heavy attacks straight over the top chops, but its light attacks are kind of anemic. You will be able to kill poxwalkers with it, but then infantry guys might take 2 hits. The fucking antax here, when you get full stacks of all your Zealot blessings and stuff, every enemy, including shotgunners, will die to a headshot just light attack chop. Elite gunners will take 2, or if you get a crit, they obviously instantly die. Maulers, you literally just light attack them in the legs because they don't have any carapace armor on their legs, and they'll die in 4 chops. This weapon is great because I think this is if I were to pick a weapon for a new player playing Zealot, I would pick this for them because it sort of eliminates the counterplay from enemies. You're going to be encountering, if you're just going to be encountering a few enemies, say you're playing on malice or something like that, there's not as many enemies around you, so the enemies you do encounter, when you hit them with this antax, they're stun locked because it has a really high impact bonus from having such a high single target damage just from the light attack, so they don't get any chance to retaliate against you. Versus playing with one of these weapons up here, yes, you can kill those enemies faster. However, enemies do get a chance to attack you if you don't kill them outright with the first attack. So this one, if it doesn't kill them on the first attack, it'll stagger them, and the second attack will kill them. So it's a really, really solid weapon. And then we do have to talk about the black sheep of the family. The sole weapon that I will be putting in D tiers, I guess spoilers or whatever, it's the Atlas Combat Axe. This thing is just all sorts of fucked up. I mean, really. This thing is the exact same statting has the Rashad. I don't know if that's true, but it really has like, you know, it tries to do the same thing as Rashad, but they just completely fucked the moveset. It was like they said, all right, well, we've got this axe that does light attacks and has weak, strong attacks. We've got this axe that has big, strong attacks, but weak, light attacks. What else do we do? Oh, I don't know. Let's just make this weapon again because we have this firefighter model for the axe. It looks kind of cool, and then we'll just give it a random moveset that like an AI generated, like a first generation AI generated. That's what it feels like, because we have a light attack set that literally is, it's like one overhead chop that's not quite perfectly vertical, so you might miss the enemy on the left because it angles slightly, and then it's two kind of random sweeps from weird corners that just, they do not nearly hit as much stuff as the Antax's left chop, right chop, left chop, right chop. On paper, this axe looks fantastic because it is finesse, but so does the Rashad. Then we got to talk about the heavy attack on this thing. Instead of, you know, you're running a combat axe, you're trying to chop. You're trying to, you know, if you want to use the heavy attack, you're trying to. I see a crusher. I want to charge in. I want to chop him right in the head. Okay, both of these weapons, what would you do if you had these and you wanted to single target kill? You would raise the axe above your head and you would drop the fucking thing on them like a, you know, like a hammer. Guess what you do with this weapon? Oh, you flip it around and you pull it over to the right side of your body and you swing it through. And oh yeah, it has no cleave, so the first enemy you hit, regardless of what they are, it just dead stops you in your tracks. So you'll just catch on like a randomest. It's like the old thunderhammer, when this Crucis used to like just catch on random small enemies because it's so long, and you would lose your entire shock thing. So like even the charge attack is just fucked in this thing because you can't get it to connect with target because it's swinging through a bunch of other stuff, and its push stab is worthless. I mean, it's just, why? The weapons that go down here are like, why would you use this? Because there's better stuff. This one is like, why would you use this ever? These two are just straight upgrades no matter what you're trying to do. You were kneecapping yourself if you were playing with this weapon and thinking that it's good because of X reason. I guarantee if you're using the light attacks for this weapon, if you swap to Antax, you'll get 20, 30, 40% more damage in the game because you won't be missing attacks. And you won't have to focus as much to like actually hit the attacks. If you're using heavy attacks with this thing, I don't know why you'd be doing that. Yeah, so just drop it and play with one of these two if you are really sold on combat axes in the current state of the game. Okay, well, we got the Ogryn shovel. All shovels in this game, in my earnest opinion, let's dig them up. Where are they? Get them out here. All shovels in this game are B tier. They're perfectly fine across the board. Shovels, they're going to fit in the same category as the Katachan, the devil swords I'm about to talk about in a second. These weapons are just perfectly average. I like that they have their little special, you know, you bend the blade thingy. I think that's cool and all, but they are very well rounded. And like in the balanced sort of game designy way, right? They have decent single target, they have decent multi-target across their spectrum. They're weapons that you start playing the game with. They're one of the first ones you unlock, and it's because they have like good move sets, like, but they just don't have any standout damage. They just can't armor pen. They can't, you know, they're not exceptional at anything, and that's what sort of holds them back here. There are certain weapons that let's just look at the Ogryn shield, for instance. It is an incredibly well-rounded weapon, right? It has a lower damage profile, like a lot lower than the single target bully club does. However, the Ogryn's talent tree makes up for that, and you can use it to like multiply the damage that you do by hitting multiple enemies at once. So the Ogryn's talent tree makes up for it. There's nothing that really makes up for the mediocrity of these weapons. They don't have anything, like, if they had a lot of strengths and one weakness and we could shore up that one weakness, that would make them way better. But they're just kind of like mid to okay across the board, and therefore we can't really like improve on them a whole lot. Yeah, so they're fun, like, thematic weapons. I get that you can, like, bend a little thing and insta-kill a mutant, but there's a million things that insta-kill a mutant. So why are we using them? Speaking of weapons that why are we using? I have to go ahead and put the other 2 marks of the dueling sword that shall not be named down here in C tier, solely to dissuade you from using them if you're thinking about using them. If you happen to have mastery ranking or a good rolled dueling sword, pick the Mark IV Macabian and never look back. It has the perfect moveset. It is perfectly balanced, as all things should be. The light attacks are just swish, 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 left to right. They come out evenly spaced, and the heavy attacks are poke, 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 poke infinitely. So you can always count on that next attack being a line drive right for their orbital. These 2 weapons try to improvise, to take that formula and make it their own. So one of them, I can't distinguish between the 2 of them. One of them, its light attacks come out with like a little bit of a pause. It's like swish, 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 swish. That's a gap where you're gonna take a hit. That pause in there. Why would you introduce that gap when you could be keeping a very consistent swish, 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 and keeping enemies back? Being able to rely on your next hit coming out. Your brain is really good at that sort of stuff, right? Your brain can figure out, okay, my next attack is coming out in 45 milliseconds. Even if you don't understand what that is, your brain kind of does. I need to be aiming over to the right for this next attack to be delivered. If you're working into that, like, oh, there's going to be a pause between these attacks. Because I did a set of 2. It's like the difference between like an automatic rifle and a burst fire rifle. Like, most games, if you can control the spray, you want to go for the automatic rifle. This is your automatic rifle. This is your burst fire or whatever it is. Then the heavy attacks on them, they're just trying to improvise on an already perfected recipe. The heavy attacks, one of them starts with a lunge, and then it does a sweep from left to right. We don't need that. We just want the lunges because we've already got sweeps in the light attacks. And then the other one, it does this weird like heavy attack, like he like wafts it up in the air like he's saying Wingardium Leviosa, and then he like drops the sword down. It does not do anywhere near as much damage, has nowhere near as much armor pen as the heavy attack does, and because it comes from the top of the screen, it's way harder to go for a specific like spot. So for instance, you're trying to shoot hit a Beast of Murgle's weak spot, which is in the middle of their body. You could like accidentally hit something above that, right, instead of like right into the weak spot, just as a instance. Or like a mutant, right, you could hit the top of their back instead of their head because their head's right in the middle of their body. That's a better example. Okay, so yeah, I'm putting these 2 down here in C tier just to dissuade you from using them. If you have a good dueling sword, make it a Mark IV, make it a Michelob Ultra. All right, we got Power Sword. Power Swords are A tier. Yeah, I'll give them A tier. I don't really have any particular affinity for either Power Sword. These used to be the absolute beast of the game, right? People were complaining left and right about these damn things. They did honestly used to be very busted. You used to be able to get Power Cycler, the additional charges for sweeping back and forth with the power, and you would basically have that thing on for like 40 seconds. It felt like just swish, 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 and it also just instantly killed maulers and crushers. It just completely negated their armor. It was, to be honest, quite dumb. The problem with these weapons is they offer no mobility. They don't have, like, you're very slow when you're wielding them, and because when you activate it, you move slower for that second where you go psh and turn the power on, you end up like, this is a better weapon if you're backed into a corner, you need to clear some horde and make some breathing room. You turn it on and go psh, 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 swish it around. The problem comes when like you're actually facing like a lot of enemies that are rushing you down. You don't always have time to make your weapon, glow all special. Especially at higher levels of play, there's very nearly constantly something like attacking you in melee. It's better, like I was saying before, to have those gaps in your attacks filled. And one of the things you don't want to be doing when, say a rager is attacking you is making sure the on switch is flipped on your power sword. That, in addition to all the nerfs that they've gotten over the years, like, they're still fine weapons. They still will do good damage. And if you're a veteran who's like, the one thing you need to shore up is your horde control management, go ahead and grab these. They're fine. The Power Cycler will still treat you right, and I got no problem with people running these things. It's just like they're nowhere near what they used to be. All right, let's do Oh, speaking, we talked about a weapon that's come downhill from where it used to be. Let's talk about a weapon that's gone uphill and has sort of reached the apex of where it's ever been, which is the Crucis Thunderhammer. So this thing, it used to be like used for cheesing one-shotting bosses. However, these days, if you want to one-shot bosses, you're up here, right? This thing lost its ability to one-shot bosses. They nerfed its damage to unyielding to bosses. However, they gave it a 1.5x finesse multiplier, meaning headshot multiplier. So, which makes sense because, like back in medieval times, ye olde times, when you were trying to kill someone in like full plate armor, you had a little halberd, and the back of it was a hammer because you were trying to hit them in the helm piece and dent their helm and fucking break their skull. So this thing should be really good at hitting enemies in the head and killing them. It wasn't before, but now it is. So sweeping at head level with this thing is become very good. And it's got a great swing pattern for that. Its heavy attacks are just sweep right, sweep left, sweep right, sweep left on repeat. So really, really great for just keeping everything back. It's got good blessings, specifically all of these, a lot of these weapons up here, the shield, the two bully clubs, this thunderhammer, they all have, what is it called? I don't know this off the top of my head. Don't yell at me. They all have Skull Crusher, which is a blessing. If the target is staggered, including by the hit you just hit them with, they are going to take 40% extra damage. So, I mean, these are weapons that are easy to stagger enemies with, right? And then you'll apply bleed stacks afterwards of your Ogryn that are going to deal 40% extra damage. You could also use Thrust with this thing to get extra power out of your heavy attacks. Or you could do Head Taker. It's a little bit harder to use, but Slaughterer is really good on it. You just end up like, you know, it's very reliable, and they did fix the one problem. Well, a couple. They actually give this thing a lot of buffs, really, which is just showing like how much help it was in need of. It used to be that when you activated this thing, the Crucis specifically, your heavy attack with the charge hit would still come from right to left like your regular charge attacks, and so it would get caught on, like, you know, just whatever was kind of hanging out on the right side of your screen, and you would absolutely murder the fuck out of a Plague Walker, but the Crusher would just overhead you the next second, right? Because you didn't kill him. Now, when you activate it, it goes into an overhead attack profile for that activated attack, which is amazing because now you can like charge forward and you are sure you're going to hit that Crusher with this charge attack rather than anybody else, which is the reason that the Iron Helm, the other Thunderhammer, used to be used at all. Where is it? There it is. It used to be used at all, but now it's sort of fallen down a little bit just because it no longer has that one thing that made it unique. And the Crucis has higher damage on its charge attacks because they thought it'd be harder to land. But now it's got a higher damage and it's easier to land. It's as easy to land. The Iron Helm, I just don't like its attack profiles quite as much. It's still a completely fine weapon to use. I just think the Crucis is really where it's at. But they both share the same blessings. So, and you're free to swap between the two of them thanks to the new system. We've got, let's do Cleavers. Cleavers, I'll give them A tier. I'm gonna give these two Cleavers B tier. They're fine. I think the Mark III Cleaver has the best attack pattern out of these, so I'll give it A tier. The Cleavers used to be the premier light attack weapons for Ogryn. You know, it's not a very common build to see Ogryns running these days. I think the meta for Ogryn has been figured out that like heavy attacks are just absolutely fucking absurd on him. Like you can use any weapon, shield included, right? It has a very low damage of its own generally, but the bleeds that you apply and the damage increases that you apply to enemies by staggering them and stuff, that's what murders them. So light attacking has kind of fallen by the wayside for the Ogryn, except for the Carsolus. It's a really good lighting attacking weapon. So these have kind of fallen out of favor. You know, it used to be a thing right at the release of the game, but yeah, the heavy attacks just, you know, have dominated. But the Mark III Cleaver has the best moveset out of these, so I'll rank it a little bit higher just because it's going to have that good easy use factor, and there are some blessings on there that will shore up your defense, your toughness replenishment, which you will need because like the heavy attackers get access to you know, special talents that give them toughness when they land a heavy attack, and you don't get that if you're using this. The Shock Maul. What is this? That's what this is called, right? A tier. The Zealot weapon. This is just such a unique weapon. It doesn't, it has decent damage, but it's very clunky to use. However, it's safe. Like, you can see a zealot clutching with this. Not very often you'll see a zealot using it, but it'll just stun everything around them. It can soften up bosses because it does also have Skull Crusher, like these other blunt weapons do. You know, it's a decent weapon. I think the problem with it is it's a slow weapon and doesn't really have any way of like getting rid of the threats that you're stalling infinitely with the shock stuff. Like, you can continue backing away from a horde of crushers and bulwarks and stuff and hitting them with the shock maul, and they'll all get stunned, and you can make some more distance, and you can rinse and repeat that, and you can kite a horde out for like 5 minutes and then eventually get rid of all of it. But in the same time, you could have just gotten in there and like killed everything with, like, you know, the yes, you know, these up here. You could absolutely murderize everything in that pack with these, no problem. So yeah, it's interesting. I like the blessings it has on it. It's a fine weapon to use. You don't see it very often, but it's still good. Like, it's good enough. Weapons that you also don't see very often. I'm gonna put the heavy eviscerator. We're actually missing a heavy eviscerator. The Mark III heavy eviscerator is also in B tier in my opinion. They just, again, like, these weapons have lost so much of what used to make them unique, because they used to be like, I don't know if they've lost or they never had it, but in my mind they used to be like, oh yeah, this weapon, like, you land the attack with the chainsaw mode and it'll saw that motherfucker in half, and now it's like, whoop-de-doo, like, I can instantly perforate a crusher's larynx with one attack from a sword that must weigh an ounce. This thing feels like I'm waving around like an airplane wing. Like, it's so slow to use. And all the time I was using both this one and the Mark III when I was streaming and show it, like, and practicing with all these weapons, people were like, oh, well, someone, no, when I say people, one person was telling me, like, oh yeah, well, with the Mark III, you need to push stab and then chain into heavy from there, and that way it's like a 2 sweeps back and forth. It's like, dude, that is so much work. Like, comparatively to this and these Rashad and or the, you know, even like especially the thunderhammer, which is just like hold down left click, like, you just sweep back and forth, and it just repeats. I felt like I was working really hard to look like I was a noob playing with these weapons. And again, slower weapons are gonna trend lower in the tree because they have big gaps where you get hit with them. You know, excepting Ogryn stuff, which is, you know, an exception. And then I'll give the thunderhammer the S, just because, yeah, it's got a lot of other stuff going on. I like where it's at right now. Maybe this is a little bit ambitious for the thunderhammer, but I approve thunderhammer. I think you really glowed up a lot. Okay, so yeah, both of these heavy eviscerators, the zealot only weapons, B tier. They're just not special comparatively to other stuff right now. Okay, let's talk about the other little swords. I think all of these little chain swords can be A tier. They're perfectly fine. They do have a standout blessing, bloodletter. If you activate them, they're gonna go and they're gonna put 14 stacks of bleed on an enemy. That's actually pretty sick. Like, you know, it's a kill on mutants and stuff like that if you can land the charge attack. And the difference between charging these things up and charging this big boy up is like night and day. These things, you can rev them up in an instant, and it feels really nice. And you can land that attack. I'm very glad you can now disengage once you've like started like doing the sawing action, but here's my problem with these weapons and why I can't really put them any higher. Honestly, like, I kind of, nah, these weapons, they're fine, right? Like, so many weapons in this game are fine. The game isn't that hard. These weapons, like, they attack very fast and they have okay damage. They have nice blessings. They all have access to shred, which is really, really good in the current meta. You know, just crits in general are good. So I like them. The problem is because they have that special activated attack, the devs were like, okay, well, we can't make it as good as the Antax at light attacking and have it has the special attack that, you know, stun locks an enemy and then bleeds them to shit. So we'll nerf their like damage and stagger a little bit. And that kind of like makes them kind of frustrating to play because you'll be hitting enemies a lot with like a fucking chainsaw edge, and the enemies are just standing there and taking it, and you're like, why aren't you getting staggered at all? I wish there was, I mean, I get that that's what this is. This is too slow swinging. I wish there was one that was a little bit slower swinging, like the Antax, that like did a little bit of a saw on each bite. I get that's what the axe is, but these are just clunky on their own regard. Maybe I'm just designing one of these basically, but yeah, they just like they don't stagger at all, and so I think that is something that when you're doing like a light attack weapon like this that has that heavy, you know, the special attack you want to bring out every now and then, that's what I would need to bring them up another tier. But they're fine as is, right? Because these things are really good for clearing hordes. I can't remember exactly which one. Like the default one you get, I think it might be this one in the middle. Light attacks, it's really fast. Boop boop boop. You can just instantly like chop up you know, guys in front of you. And the heavy attacks are just sweeps. Pretty easy to deal with. You know, it's a nice weapon for newer players. And then if you get to a boss, you charge the attack. You do the rev mode, and then it puts a ton of bleeds on them and chunks them as you rip the sword out. And it does really good like boss shield damage or like kills beasts and nurgles, all that good stuff. All right, speaking of a weapon that does, I won't always say that's bad boss damage. These heavy swords, I kind of was surprised by these when I made a video about it this year. This is the Mark 9. I'm gonna put that down in B tier. So the reason that Mark 9 out of these 3 heavy swords goes in B tier, it's got the easiest attack pattern. However, it doesn't have the damage. It has like half the damage the other ones do. These other 2 swords on their heavy attack, they sweep for like 700 plus damage, and if you headshot, like they'll lop off the heads of anything you go into. And so the only problem is you've got the Mark 7. Well, I'm going to give both of these A tier. I think they're fine. I think the Zealot is the best class to play them on. If you are interested in playing heavy sword, the Mark 7, I think is the one on the left. It starts with a sweep from like right to left, and it kind of like goes uphill as it sweeps, which means you're going to miss heavy, like you're gonna miss heads on that heavy attack. And then the second heavy attack is a upward, like a vertical chop, so you'll single target. The other one, the Mark 6, its first attack is that heavy chop, vertical chop, but the second attack is a perfect, like nice horizontal sweep, so you can like level everything in front of you. So you'll charge in and do that, but then you gotta learn to like get rid of that first chop and then start charging that second big sweep. So when you finally reach the target, you go whoosh, and you know, behead everything in a big circle. All right, so we got these Katachan Devil's Claw swords. I'm giving them all B tier. You know, these, just like the shovels, these are weapons you start the game with. They have a very even damage profile. They have really, really easy to manage swing patterns, and you know, it's like light attacks are fast, they come out fast, they don't do very much damage, and the heavy attacks are left to right sweeps. And they're like that because these are for newer players who are, you know, they need a middle of the road weapon that kind of shores up some of the problems that newer players have with dealing with multiple like horde threats at once. So newer players, they want these sweeping weapons because if you gave them a single target weapon and like, you know, and told them like, oh, defend yourself with this, they would struggle. They need something that can like carve a little bit of a breathing room for them. And these are great if you're playing on the first, second, or third difficulty. But when you start heading into difficulty 4 and 5, you start encountering enemies that these weapons will do nothing against. The first time you see a pack of maulers, you'll see like 1 mauler in a whole mission on like difficulty 2, maybe a couple on 3, but the first time you see like 4 or 5 maulers and you pull this thing out and run in there to chop them with it, it'll do nothing. It'll tickle them. And God forbid you ever run up against a crusher. You'll never kill it with one of these things. So yeah, they remain relevant to people who are playing on low tier content, but the higher you get, the more irrelevant these guys become. We've also got the other B tier weapons, these shock mauls, the Ogryn shock maul, as well as the 2 for other classes. Again, just like the shovels and just like the chainswords, they sacrifice a lot of damage and like actual ability to kill stuff and like stand out in their damage profile because they have all this utility baked in. Like these things can have Skull Crusher, which means they can augment the damage enemies take. They have like shock based blessings. I think they're interesting weapons, but they just don't really like synergize with the way that any classes are played right now. Like a Zealot does not want to be popping this thing out and bonking enemies because it does no damage. A veteran or a Ogryn doesn't want to be using this thing because he won't be using the heavy attacks with it. He'll just be using the charged bop attack to shock people, and he really wants to be using heavy attacks to get the benefit out of his class. You've never been carried in a game, be like, holy shit, what is this guy using? Let me check him out. And you go to inspect him and he's using a shock ball. Let's just put it that way. That's never happened. It is not nearly as disappointing as the other weapons I'm going to put in C tier, which is these tactical axes. And here's the problem with these tactical axes. I'll spell it out for you if you need me to, but let me see if I can guide you into figuring out what the problem with these is without saying it outright. These weapons, they attack very fast. They have they have high crit chance. They have very high mobility. They have a special blessing that only one other weapon has that allows, when you get a headshot, it resets your dodge counter, so you can remain super mobile while you're using them. The only thing that they have a problem with versus their competitor weapon that I'm alluding to is that they have no ability to actually kill anything. They do tiddlywinks damage comparatively. Their heavy attacks do the same damage that Antac's light attack does. So what other weapon has all of that? However, it can just kill the shit out of anything it decides to. Well, it's this one right here, of course. It has the same agile blessing. It can dance around for days. It's one of the highest mobility weapons in the game. There's no reason to use these right now, and that's why they're C tier. Is because just like the other variants of the Macabian dueling sword, they have in like ecology. There's a concept like called the niche, right? In every ecosystem, the organism has to have its own niche to continue existing. If you're competing for the same resources, if you're competing for the same habitat, if you've got the same prey that you're both going after, whichever one of you is better is going to outcompete the other, and then the one that's got outcompeted is going to die off. And that's what's happening to these things. Is everybody that wants to play that super agile, fast-moving mode, whether you're light attacking, fencing around the target with these things, and you go for high crit and stuff, they're running the dueling sword now because you can get it on every class. There's no reason to run these. And yeah, that's the true reality of it. And if you wanted to go for like heavier hitting stuff, you want to do heavy attacks with these, just do light attacks on the Antax. It does as much damage and it has a better swing pattern. So that's the truth there. And then finally, we've got Blaze Force Swords. These things, first off, I'm going to give S tier to the Demos Blaze Force Sword. I think it's got the best swing pattern out of all of them. They all share access to the same blessings. These weapons are like, you will pull this out when you're, not quite using, when you're not using your staff on the Psyker, right? This is not like the weapon you're going to use if you're going for a aggressive melee like Squire's Gaze style Psyker. No, it's for like, okay, I need an extra way to get a few stacks of Soul Blaze on some enemies so I can start my Soul Blaze venting shriek, siphon circle and just blast through stuff. They're nice defensive weapons. They've got a great push and push stab. They've got a pretty cool activated mode that does some good single target damage. It'll pop a mutant instantly. And they can also get deflector, so to block stuff. That was like all the fucking rage when the game came out. Everyone was like, oh, deflector. Oh my god, you can block all day. And now people have figured out you can just dodge most attacks. I'll give the other two variants A tier, just because they all share those same blessings. I don't think you're going to be held back by the moveset too much, but the Demos for sure has the best moveset out of all of them. So if you're looking for a Blaze Force Sword, just pick Demos. And there it is, guys. That is the whole melee tier list. As you can see, very heavily weighted towards average to good to great to insane, right? Right now, the biggest problem with weapon balancing in this game is that we have this this ruling class of weapons that sort of invalidates the existence of many things. There have been so many builds that I have taken a revisit to in this last patch and been like, wouldn't that just be wetter? Well, it'll make me wetter. Wouldn't that just be better if I swapped in one of these weapons for what I'm currently using? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is yes. That's when you have an issue. That's when you're going to end up with there being a solution to combat encounters, and you're going to end up with like more homogenous builds. So I'm not saying these weapons need to be brought down, but maybe some of these need to be brought up, but probably more honestly, these weapons need to be sort of brought more in line with the other ones, because right now skilled players can just abuse the absolute shit out of these. I know it'll make people mad. I'm making myself mad by saying it, to be honest, because I don't want them nerfed because I love using them, but I do kind of like miss playing like Antax, but now if I wanted to play Antax, I'd just play Dueling Sword instead. That's just where I'm at. Okay guys, well thank you very much for watching. I hope you liked it. If you did, subscribe, like, comment on the video. Tell me if you thought anything else should have been lower or higher or whatever you need. And I really appreciate you watching. Thanks again. Mr. E out.